A Ukrainian drone strike destroyed a Russian weapons warehouse in the Tupperware region, a source in Ukraine's SBU State Security Service told Reuters on Wednesday. This unverified footage shows a huge ball of flames blasting into the sky and multiple detonations. The source said the warehouse in the town of Tupperware contained weapons intended for tactical missile systems, as well as guided aerial bombs and artillery ammunition, and that a fire from the blast took hold of a nearly 4-mile-wide area. The Ukraine SBU source said it was part of reducing the enemy's missile potential, which it uses to destroy Ukrainian cities. War bloggers and media reported earlier on Wednesday the attack, over 200 miles west of Moscow, was near the site of a large Russian arsenal. NASA satellites picked up intense heat sources emanating from an area of about 5 square miles at the site in the early hours, and earthquake monitoring stations picked up what sensors thought was a small earthquake in the area. Explosions could be heard in the distance as Tver's governor Igor Rudynya addressed local media. He made no mention of the weapons warehouse and said Russia's air defense system successfully shot down unmanned aerial vehicles overnight, with falling debris causing the fire to start. He added that evacuations of residents in the area were underway. Rudynya later said the fire had been put out and residents could return with no recorded fatalities. Russian state media have in the past reported that a major arsenal for conventional weapons was located at the site of the blasts. State media, which is now subject to military censorship laws, was muted in its reporting on Wednesday. Both sides deny attacking civilians in the war fought since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022.
Investigators say they know the cause of an engine failure on a Cathay Pacific flight. They blamed a damaged fuel hose which also showed signs of a fire. The probe was conducted by Hong Kong's Air Accident Investigation Authority, which released its results on Thursday. It began investigating after a passenger flight on an Airbus A350 jet received an engine fire warning shortly after takeoff on September 2nd. Investigators found a ruptured fuel hose in one of the plane's engines and 5 more secondary fuel hoses showing signs of wear and tear. The report said this, coupled with other factors like the presence of oxygen and a heat source, could lead to a fire that spread. It warned that if not found promptly and fixed, that could lead to further failures and potentially cause extensive damage to the aircraft. Cathay Pacific began inspecting all its Airbus A350 jets after the incident. The airline said it was the first component of its type to suffer such a failure on any A350 aircraft worldwide.
Nintendo and the Pokemon company are suing the makers of the hit Palworld video game. The pair said Thursday that they are taking Tokyo-based game developer Pocket Pair to court over alleged patent infringements. They're seeking an injunction and compensation for damages. Sometimes called Pokemon with Guns, Palworld is one of this year's breakout hit games. It gained over 25 million players within a month of being launched in mid-January. In the game, players capture and train cute creatures called pals, who can, like the player, use guns. After it was launched, the Pokemon company said it would investigate and take action over any intellectual property violation. Pocket Pair did not immediately respond to a request for comment on Thursday's news. In July, it announced the creation of a joint venture with Sony to promote the game worldwide. Palworld is available on platforms including Steam and Microsoft's Xbox.
The U.S. Justice Department is seeking more than $100 million from the owner and operator of the container ship that destroyed the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore back in March. The DOJ filed the civil claim on Wednesday in a bid to recover the money incurred by the government in responding to the disaster that killed 6, and for clearing the 50,000 tons of debris that paralyzed a major transportation artery for the U.S. Northeast. The lawsuit was brought as part of a legal action initiated by Grace Ocean Private Limited and Synergy Marine Private Limited, the Singaporean corporations that owned and operated the cargo ship, to limit their liability for the crash to $44 million, a sum Justice Department officials called woefully inadequate. In a statement, the head of the DOJ's Civil Division called the crash an avoidable catastrophe resulting from a series of imminently foreseeable errors. Representatives for Grace Ocean and Synergy could not immediately be reached for comment. Maryland estimates it will cost $1.7 to $1.9 billion to rebuild the bridge, and anticipates completion by fall 2028.
It is a 100% electric vehicle made in Chile with heavy-duty features, which means it is developed and designed to work in extreme conditions. It has a capacity for 24 passengers, an ABS braking system, and a range of 200 kilometers.
Tupperware, whose iconic plastic food containers once filled millions of American kitchens, has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The move comes after several years of falling sales and failed turnaround efforts, as demand slipped due to rivals making cheaper and more environmentally friendly containers. The company said it will now chart out a sale process for the business. By doing so, it has likely sealed the fate of the so-called Tupperware lady, the nickname given to a generation of post-war housewives seeking empowerment who sold the plastic products at in-home gatherings known as Tupperware parties. The company enjoyed a brief resurgence during the pandemic as more Americans cooked at home amid travel curbs. But after some wild swings during the meme stock rallies of that period, shares of Tupperware ultimately slumped in 2023 as it delayed annual reports and breached its credit obligations.
The Global Vaccine Alliance Gavi said on Wednesday that it will buy 500,000 doses of Bavarian Nordic's Mpox vaccine. That would be its first purchase of the shot to help battle an Mpox outbreak in parts of Africa. So far this year, there have been more than 25,000 suspected Mpox cases, according to the World Health Organization, and 723 deaths. Most have been in Democratic Republic of Congo. The WHO has declared the outbreak a global health emergency. Gavi is a public-private alliance which co-funds vaccine purchases for low-income countries. It said it will spend up to $50 million on the plan, which includes transportation, delivery, and the costs of administering the doses. The shots are due to be delivered this year. The WHO has said around 3.6 million doses of Mpox vaccine have already been pledged to Congo by wealthy nations that have stockpiles. However, only a small portion have arrived so far.
Global stocks got a lift Thursday, a day after the US Federal Reserve cut rates by 0.5 percentage point and signalled there was more to come. Japan's Nikkei index jumped around 2.5% in morning trade, while Australian stocks hit record levels. That followed all-time highs for the S&P 500 index in US trade. Investors were cheered by the outlook from Fed Chair Jerome Powell, who said the US economy was on track.
This decision reflects our growing confidence that with an appropriate recalibration of our policy stance, strength in the labor market can be maintained in a context of moderate growth and inflation moving sustainably down to 2%.
The Fed's move is expected to support spending and the US economy in general, offering hope for Asian exporters. Japan's big names were also boosted by declines for the yen against the dollar following the rate cut. Toyota and Hitachi were both up over 5% in morning trade. With the Fed's big call out of the way, Institute of Global Finance Director Fariborz Moshirian says investor focus now switches to the US election.
Who will be the president, if you like, in 2025 onwards, because their policies, depending on who is going to be their president, will directly influence actually the value of US dollars, inflation in US basically, and hence interest rate. So that's a space that we really need to wait and see.
Not every sector joined the party on Thursday, however. Asia's big chip makers tumbled after a downbeat outlook for the sector from Morgan Stanley. In South Korea, SK Hynix plunged around 8% and Samsung was down close to 3%. That drove the country's benchmark Kospi index lower in morning trade.
Nel nome del Padre, del Figlio e dello Spirito Santo. La pace sia con voi.
In recent days, heavy torrential rains have hit Central and Eastern Europe, causing casualties, missing persons and extensive damage. Especially Austria, Romania, Czech Republic and Poland have to cope with the tragic disruptions caused by the floods. I assure everyone of my closeness, praying especially for those who lost their lives and their families.